Hi guys, we are on week 2 of this quarantine thing. So here is the PowerPoint on emotions. Hopefully that can be a little bit more helpful for you guys to do your PDF file. Again, remember, try to print it out if you can, and then fill it out and then resubmit it via Google Classroom. If there's no way that you can do that, then you guys can just give it to me when we get back, or you can just take pictures of it with your cell phones, which I know most of you guys have, and just submit it into Google Classroom. I just need to know that you guys are doing something and that you are keeping up with the pace. Next week, I will try to figure out a different method of trying to monitor your progress, probably just with some questions that you guys can just submit via Google Classroom. But I hope you guys are doing well, and let's get into the chapter about emotions. So emotions, obviously, a lot of us have them. We all have them. I'm sure that there are some of you guys that are experiencing different emotions during this time. Whatever they are, they're probably really valid. I know it can be very overwhelming during this whole thing. A lot of us, we don't really know what to feel. So basically what emotions are is that it is a state of feeling that has cognitive, physiological, and behavioral components, meaning that when you guys feel something, it's going to affect the way you think, the way you feel physically, and then what you end up doing. So let's take anger. Anger is an easy emotion. I'm sure all of us have felt anger before. So when you're really, really angry about something, how does it affect your thinking? Like in your head, are you thinking, oh my gosh, I can't stand them, or I can't believe they did that, or they're a terrible person, or oh, I'm just so upset with everything, like what's happening? So this can affect your thinking. Then physiologically, what goes on for you guys in your body? I know for me, when I'm really upset, like I get really red, or my face gets hot. Sometimes we get trembly, or we start shaking. Sometimes your head might get really hot also, or feel really full. It just kind of depends. And then behaviorally, what do? Some of us scream, some of us isolate, some of us throw things. Some of us talk to our friends. And so it's going to affect our emotions, affect every part of who we are. And so when you guys are feeling a heightened emotion, your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is going to be active. So sympathetic, again, we learned about this in our chapters before. This is going to be the one that deals with arousal. Sorry, it's like really hard to write with this thing. So your heart's going to be faster. You're going to sweat. You're going to have a heightened sense of fight or flight. The parasympathetic part is going to be the calming part. In our earlier chapter, we talked about how it's like the floating parachute. So it's like parasympathetic, parachute. And so this one is arousal. This one is calming. So just like motivation, there are different theories for emotion. There's no right or wrong. It's really just what you believe is beneficial for you and how you process emotions. And for some people, they've said that emotions is kind of like the chicken and the egg question, like which came first, the chicken or the egg? And you can go round and round with that. Same thing with emotion. Is it that we feel an emotion first and then our body responds, or is it that our body responds and is already feeling something and then we feel the emotion? So the whole idea is, does your heart pound because you are afraid, or are you afraid because your heart is already pounding? So there are 3 different theories. The first one is James Lang. So James Lang basically says that you have to first have the awareness of the physiological, like biological response, and then you feel the emotion. So let's say we almost got into a car accident. That's the event. Your body is going to first respond. So you're going to either start sweating or your heart's going to start pounding. And then you feel, oh my gosh, that was really fearful. So it goes arousal first, physically, then you feel the emotion, according to James Lang. Okay, Cannon Bard. Cannon Bard believes that we feel the emotion and the physiological arousal at the exact same time. So you almost get into a car accident at the exact same time simultaneously. You feel your heart pounding. At the same time, you feel fear. So the only way that I can help you with the trick is that the C and the B are right next to each other in the alphabet. So maybe that's simultaneous. So at the same time, so you have the physical arousal and the emotion at the exact same time next to each other. Okay, the third one is called Schachter two-factor of emotion. So he focuses on there's 2 factors, and the main one is the cognition. So he believes that you first almost have a car accident, so that's your event. Your heart is going to pound, so you're going to feel the physiological arousal first. Then in your head, cognitively, you are going to appraise it, or you're going to label as, oh my gosh, that was really scary. Then you feel the emotion of fear. So it's like this two factors. You have the arousal and then the cognitive label, and then you feel the emotion. Okay, so this one, if I was to give you another example of this, it could be, let's say some of us have test anxiety. Okay, so the event is you have a test placed right in front of you. Already you already feel yourself sweating, or your heart is pounding. Then you think in your head, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail. This test is really hard. I didn't prepare enough. Then you feel the sense of anxiety. So it goes the arousal, the cognitive label, and then you feel the emotion. The second part of his theory, so there's two parts to it. It's this bridge example. And so what he did was that he had a sturdy bridge, and then he had this really rocky, scary bridge. And he had men basically cross the different bridges, and then he placed a decent looking woman at the end of the bridge. And what he discovered was that a lot of the men were feeling aroused, even because it was kind of fearful, on this really scary bridge. And then most of those men were more likely to ask this female for her phone number because they're already aroused. So the whole idea is that whenever we're really physically aroused, whether it's from fear, anger, sex, whatever, you're more likely to have more love for somebody else. So that's like the whole idea of, near-death experiences, is the fact that a lot of times when we have a near-death experience, the first thing we think about is our loved ones. And so if all of us were experiencing some tragic thing together, like a lockdown or something like that, we as a class would have a lot of affection for each other because we're already physically aroused from fear. So then it's going to end up bonding us. So the joke is, if you want to meet somebody and you want to date someone, if you just go to an amusement park, you should just wait at the end of a really scary ride because they're already going to be aroused and have adrenaline. So you asking them out is going to have a better chance of them saying yes to you. So tips for dating. Here's a video of this whole theory. Ignore the beginning part. It's a little scandalous. Just forget that part. But the rest of it is good.
Testosterone, the lust drug, drives men to compete for women, then mate with them.
Women's behavior changes men's testosterone levels, and that changes the way men behave towards the women. Testosterone also encourages males to be more competitive, and the more competitive the male, the more his mating opportunities.
Testosterone is at the heart of a woman's sex drive as well. But this lust drug will only get you into the sack. The feelings that keep you there stem from another chemical, dopamine.
Dopamine gives you those feelings of elation, giddiness, euphoria, the focused attention.
Dopamine is the brain's pleasure chemical. Drugs like cocaine also get you high by flooding your head with dopamine. With both drugs and sex, the dopamine high is addictive. It keeps us coming back for more.
Intense energy comes from dopamine in the brain. Exhilaration, you can walk all night, talk till dawn.
Dopamine, testosterone, elation, and lust all seem to be wrapped up in a complex feedback loop. And elevated dopamine levels seem to raise the sex drive even in non-romantic situations.
This is the important part.
3, 2, 1, go!
Thrill sports like bungee jumping deliver a huge dopamine rush. In the experiment to see how status affected men's sex appeal, several women rated this man's photo.
5, 4, 4.
How do you think a group of women who've just done a bungee jump will rate him?
6, 7, 9.
And I was just so excited, and the only person I could think of was my boyfriend. And when I saw him, he was really the only one I could see, and he looked amazing to me.
All it takes is a shot of dopamine to the brain to put us in the mood. And then having sex makes us want more.
Okay, so reviewing all three theories, Okay, again, James Lang basically believes that you have the event, so you have the physical arousal first of the heart pounding, and then you feel fear. Okay, Cannon Bard believes that you feel the physical arousal and the emotion of fear at the exact same time. Schachter Two-Factor believes that you feel the physical arousal, but you also have to have this cognitive label, and then you feel the emotion of fear or anger or whatever else you're thinking about or feeling. Okay, so then you have this whole idea called Yerkes-Dodson law. So Yerkes-Dodson law basically says that performance peaks at lower levels of arousal for difficult tasks like a test, and arousal needs to be at higher levels for easy or well-learned tasks. So for example, if you're taking a test, you don't want your arousal level to be too high or too low. You need to be kind of at this like optimal like middle ground of testing, because if you are too high in your arousal, then it's going to make you really anxious and it's not going to make you perform very well. So if you have an easier task like running around a track, if track is your sport, or even dancing or performing or playing basketball, if your arousal is too low, then you're going to be really sluggish and not play that well. So then you need to have a heightened level of arousal. But you don't want too much, because if you have too much, then you're going to maybe miss your shot, or not do a certain move correctly. So you want to have this like perfect level of arousal for both easy and for difficult tasks. Okay, so then how many emotions do we have? So when they're surveying, obviously we have tons of emotions. Some of us have felt emotions that we can't even describe. And so when they were surveying different countries, Chinese were basically saying that they experience happiness, sorrow, anger, and fear. We all know there's obviously more emotions than that. But if you look at a lot of Eastern cultures, like for a lot of Asians, they've been told that they're kind of stoic, meaning like they don't express too many emotions. And it could be because it's just cultural, that they might feel all the different emotions, but they've been kind of just taught to not express them as much. So then maybe that is why they reported only having such few emotions. John B. Watson believes that it was fear, rage, and love. And then for the rest of us, we probably believe that there's a large number of emotions that are not actually listed here. Okay, so then what's interesting is if you guys look at these 4 emotions, go ahead and try to draw like an emoji, stick figure, or whatever, for these 4 emotions. Okay, let's take about a minute to do that. Draw yours. Okay, try not to look at mine while I draw mine. And don't judge me because I have to use this computer. That's supposed to be an eyeball. This would be so much better if I actually could use an actual pen. What is fear? Okay. All right, look at your drawing compared to my drawing. Okay, are yours somewhat similar? So for happiness, do a lot of you guys have the up, smile? For anger, do you guys have like the angry eyebrows? For surprise, do you have like the big eyes and like the mouth open? And then for fear, is it kind of like ooh, like I'm scared? And so what they're saying is that for a lot of us, a lot of these 4 emotions are pretty universal. And so looking at them, there are 10 isolated emotions that are present when we're babies, and that they're basically saying that if you go to any country and you show some of these faces, mostly these 4, anybody in the country will be able to identify the picture as happiness, anger, surprise, or fear. Whereas sometimes, I don't know if you guys have ever had this, but if you've ever texted your friend an emoji and like they perceive it to be very different than what you think it is. So I know one of them that I always think it's funny because I think everyone thinks it's a different one. It's the one that has like the emoji that goes like this. And some people think it's like spirit fingers or like happy hands. To me, I think it's like a hug. It's like, ooh, like let me hug you. And so everyone has a different take on what emojis look like and what they are representing. But these 4 tend to be very universal, that anyone in any country can identify someone's facial expressions as these 4 emotions. And so when they're talking about emotions, these are also present in infancy, except for contempt, shame, and guilt. So if you look at this one, can you identify it? So this one's joy and happiness. This one's anger. This one is interested, like, ooh, like, what is that? This one's like, ew, gross, like, what did you just feed me? So disgust. Excuse me. And this one is surprise, like, oh. And then sadness, and this one is fear. So those of you that have seen the movie Inside Out, we were supposed to watch it in our class. Hopefully we'll have time to do that. They have all the different, like the main basic emotions. I think it's joy, sadness, disgust, anger, and fear. Okay, so then when you're experiencing emotion, so what do we do with all of the emotions that we experience, especially at your guys' age? I know as a teenager, you guys probably experience a lot of emotions, and it just depends on how you express them, of what's going to be therapeutic, what's going to make you feel better. So catharsis is basically an emotional release. So our bodies are not meant to hold all of the emotions that we have without any sort of reliefs. So obviously we've talked a lot about this in class. Doing exercise is a good stress reliever. Talking to someone is a good stress reliever. I would say journaling is a great one. Listening to music is okay. Like, it can help with your relaxation, but I feel like sometimes when we're sad, like, how many of you guys, when you're sad, you listen to sad music and then we're just more sad, right? Or like, if you're really angry, then you listen to like screaming music and then you're like super angry. And so you kind of want to, if you're going to pick music, you want to make sure whatever you're listening to isn't necessarily furthering the emotion that you're experiencing, especially if the emotion is negative. I mean, if you're happy, listening to happy music is great. But if you're really sad and then you listen to sad music and then we just cry some more, that can be therapeutic as well. And that can be a release, but we also want to find more effective ways that are more helpful. Same thing with aggressive energy. I know some of us, when we are really upset, we like to throw things or punch a wall or kick something. And is that super healthy? Like, probably not, because it's not making it constructive. And your outlet isn't necessarily positive. If you want to go to a kickboxing class, though, like, that is good because it's also endorphins and exercise. And yes, you can get the aggressive behavior out, but in a more effective way, like exercise, rather than just punching a hole in your wall, which is not effective, nor is it recommended. And so obviously, talking to someone, especially like a safe person, is a good way to release. Those of you that are not, if you're not comfortable talking to someone, I would definitely say at least journaling and getting it out on paper. And so that way it is like released from your mind, can also be really helpful. Okay, so then we have culture and gender differences. So boys, they're saying, again, I don't know because I'm not a boy, you seem to respond to anger by moving away from that situation, while girls then will talk to their friends or listen to music. Is it true? Is that not true? Ask that for yourselves. Studies are just basically showing that, like, when boys are upset with something, instead of continuing to be around it, they tend to just walk away. Whereas with girls, we might dwell on it more, but we have our friends or our support system where we're going to talk about it more, which can then be helpful. Ideally, we, as all the genders, we should basically, hopefully have someone that we can talk to instead of just shutting down or isolating. A lot of times too, anger can breed prejudice. I know that whenever there's something going on in the world, like what's happening right now, there's it's easy to target a certain population, because for some of us, scapegoating a certain group of people can help us feel better about our emotions, because, when we don't have someone to blame, it can be really hard to just being like, why is it like this? Who did this to us? And so a lot of times anger can breed prejudice, which isn't always healthy or kind to others. And then expression of anger is more encouraged in cultures that do not promote group behavior than in cultures that do promote group behavior. Basically meaning that cultures that are more individualistic, so like the American culture, Western culture, we are taught to, stand up for yourself, assert yourself, express your needs, be who you want to be. And so Western culture, like in America, we are more likely to express our anger and our frustration, rather than Eastern cultures, which are more collectivist. So they're more of a collectivist culture, like a lot of Asian cultures. We focus more on the group and the family dynamic. And so we're not taught as much to like express ourselves. We're taught more to kind of be like quiet, or, just deal with it. Don't cause any waves, just kind of like suck it up. And so it's just different how the cultures are. I know for me personally, and like coming from an Asian culture, my mom, anytime I've had a problem with something, she'll just kind of say, okay, just let it go. Just do your own thing and don't say anything. Just kind of like do it, and you'll get through it. Whereas a part of me like, you know, I was raised here, a part of me is like, well, no, like I should say something, like I should be assertive, like that's unacceptable. And so there's kind of this conflict of like cultures of being a collectivist and an individualistic culture of like, do I say anything and express my anger, or do I just kind of suck it up and like deal with it on my own? So those are just kind of the cultural and gender differences that we have a lot of times when it comes to our emotions. Okay, so then we have happiness. So people who are happy perceive the world to being safer. So I know during this time with the whole, you know, COVID-19, there's a lot of different emotions happening. And if you are someone that tends to normally be happy and joyful, your mental health right now is, you have a better chance of being grounded and feeling okay during this uncertain time that we are experiencing. Those of us that might be more pessimistic or negative, we are going to paint the world to be a little bit darker and to be not as safe. And so, you know, we always want to remind ourselves, I understand that it can be very scary out there and very uncertain, and that can bring up a lot of anxiety and fear, but we want to try our best, still try your best, all of us, to be kind and respectful. And so I do think there's a lot of tons of people out there. And so if you are more of a happy person, you tend to view the world right now as probably a little bit safer. You also are able to make decisions easily. You're more cooperative, like in a group project. You will probably interview well, like with people. It tends to be healthier and more energized and have a more satisfied life. I'll definitely say statistics have shown that it is way harder on our bodies to be angry than it is to be happy. And so obviously it's so much easier said than done, being like, oh, okay, well, just be happy and just smile. And I know that that's not always the case with our circumstances. But holding on to like anger and resentment and bitterness can be really bad for our system and for our hearts. Okay, so then we have this whole idea called feel good, do good phenomenon. So basically they're saying that when we feel happy, we're more willing to help others. Like, when is a good time to ask your parents for help or for money? Is it when they're in a bad mood and stressed out? No, it's when they're in a good mood. Or like, when are you more likely to help your friends? When you are also feeling good. When are you more likely to have like someone, you know, give someone a ride or let them borrow money when you're probably also in a good mood. So when we feel good, we're going to do more good for the community. Okay, so then experiencing emotion. Does money buy happiness? How many of you guys feel like, yeah, money does buy happiness? Especially during this time, a lot of businesses are closing. A lot of people are out of work. And so, you know, financially struggling is never something that's good for our systems. But do we necessarily think that if we had a ton of money, if it would actually make us happier? Like, can money literally buy us happiness? Half of us are probably like, oh yeah, totally. My life would be super easy if I had a ton of money. No worries, no stress, nothing. Some people might say, well, no, because a lot of times the people that have a lot of money, it also comes with a lot of stress and a lot of responsibilities, and then a lot of payments or bills. So studies have shown that money itself is actually not a contributor to actual happiness. It can alleviate some stress, but it can also add to the stress. Isn't there like a saying or a song? What is the song? I can't remember who it's by. Because I'm so old. Where it says like more money, more problems. So yeah, that's a thing. Okay, so then how do we become happier? Like, what does contribute to happiness? So they have found that people that tend to be happy tend to have a high self-esteem. So you think highly of yourself, not in like a conceited way, but like you understand your worth, your good attributes, your strengths. You also tend to be optimistic, outgoing, and agreeable. We have some close friends or a satisfying marriage or relationship. You don't have to have a ton of friends, just as long as you have a few of them. Okay, also you have work and leisure that engage their skills. So if you really like what you're doing, whether it's in your job or in your sport or your music or at school, that actually leads to happiness. Some people have said that if you have faith in something, that can lead to happiness. And then, oh my gosh, look at this last one. If we sleep well and if we exercise, that can also lead to happiness. So I know a lot of us, maybe now a lot of us are sleeping more. I have no idea. But during the school year, usually sleep and exercise tend to go downhill. So we want to up both of these in order to contribute to happiness. Things that have nothing to do with happiness is our age. It doesn't mean just because you're young and I'm old means that you're happier or I'm happier. So it's just kind of nothing to do with our age bracket. Gender, it doesn't really matter, even though they have said that women report more depression. But does that actually mean that more women are less happy and more depressed? Or does it just mean that maybe more women are comfortable reporting that they're depressed or actually seeking help more than men? Education levels doesn't really matter. Whether you have kids or not doesn't matter, and whether you're attractive or not doesn't really matter as much. And so with the physical attractiveness, how many of you guys know someone that's really, really good looking, but that are incredibly unhappy or sad or don't or have low self-esteem? So just because you range on whatever you are at an attractiveness level does not mean necessarily we are happier or less happy depending on what we look like. Okay, then last thing, lying and emotion detectors or lie detectors for emotion. So how many of you guys are good at lying, or how many of you guys are good at detecting lies? So polygraphs are one of those lie detector tests that are used a lot, but they're not like the only thing, because a lot of people have criticized a polygraph because some of us, if we just think that we're being tied to a polygraph machine, we already feel all the emotions that resemble lying. Like, how many of you guys would start sweating and your heart would be faster and your blood pressure would change and your breathing would change if I just accused you of lying, even though you weren't even lying? Or if I just made you put yourselves in this machine, how many of you guys would automatically already feel nervous, even though you didn't do anything? Another example I love is when you're driving. Any of you guys ever hear like the police, like if you hear a police car, you're like, oh my gosh, is it me? Is it me? Like, did I do something? Even though you're totally driving fine. So if you're already kind of like that, you probably would fail a polygraph, which then indicates that you're lying, which actually is inaccurate. So they will use these, but it's not the only determination.
You're going to see.
So last thing, so there's a man named Paul Ekman. Let's see if I can spell that. Okay, it's going to take a long time for me to write this. Okay, and then the word man. So Ekman. Paul Ekman, he was kind of like the king of lying. He said that there's things that we do with our face and our like expressions that sometimes just the tiniest thing in our face can indicate that we're lying. So he's I'm going to show you guys a video of him analyzing someone's face during the time where I think it was during their O.J. Simpson trial.
You're going to see Cato Kalin, this house guest of O.J. Simpson's, who's being questioned by Margaret Clark, the district attorney, in an unfriendly fashion.
At the end of the year of 1993, he was dating Paula Barbieri, wasn't he?
And he's trying very hard to conceal how he's really feeling, which is he's very angry. And what he shows is a very fast micro-expression of disgust, anger, or scorn. He does something like that, but he does it much more quickly than I'm doing it because it's a micro-expression.
Mr. Kalin, you got a lot of money for your appearance on Current Affair, didn't you?
Yes. What you're seeing is scorn, a combination of anger and disgust, wrinkling of the nose, raising and tightening of the upper lip.
To investigate when the concealed emotion revealed by a micro-expression does expose a lie, Ekman set up an experiment. Volunteers could choose whether to remove a $50 note from an envelope in an empty room. He then interrogated them to see if he could spot the liars. This man had taken the money.
Did you take that money from the envelope? Are you lying to me now? They did a really lovely micro-expression in the lips. It's an expression of disbelief that totally contradicts what he said. I'll show it to you again. Watch this area right here. Did you take that money from the envelope? Yeah, it was just happening. Money with you into this room. No. Did you take that money from the envelope? No. And then he shows us a disbelief micro-expression in his lips. So it really doesn't fit at all with what he's saying.
Okay. If you guys have ever seen the show Lie to Me, it used to be on Fox, I think. It might still be on Netflix, I can't remember. But it's kind of a show based off of his theory, and they go through a lot of micro-expressions, which is kind of really cool. And in body language, too. Okay. Then, sorry. So the last thing about lying is that this is kind of one of his charts, too, that when you're like looking at someone, if you are lying, that means we would look up and to the right if we're lying. Like, okay, this I think I did my homework. And then if you are just trying to remember something but you're not lying, you look up and to the left. So that's just one way to detect lies. Any other ways that you can detect lying can be body language. It can be oversharing details. It can be not making eye contact. One of my favorite ways to catch a liar is if they tell me a lie, like from beginning to end, I'd have them tell me the lie backwards. Because if you are trying so hard to keep the lie going, telling it to me backwards would kind of mess up somebody. So all these different ways. So these are all kind of just showing you about emotions. So emotions and motivations go nicely together. I hope this PowerPoint was a little bit helpful rather than just like having to read the book. I hope you guys are doing well and that you're taking care of yourselves. And I hope to see you guys soon. Have a good day.